So first thing that we've got a couple different styles. So for the most part, there are 3 different hollowing. We've got hand hollowing. So any of these tools up in front would be hand hollowing. We've got captive system, which would be like the similar to the Jameson style system that I've got behind us. And then there's an articulating arm system, and I'll show pictures of that one. I don't own one of those. So
push the button.
either or.
You can signal me and I'll push the button.
Sounds good. Hand toweling, there's a lot of different places you can buy it from. Here's an easy wood tool. Trent Bosch would be this one. John Jordan would be this style. Let's see. These are both hunter style tools. And then even as simple as here, my first set was a set of Allen keys I ground down to actually hollow out this stuff. Then, next slide. Captive systems, they're a little bit more expensive. They're about starting at like $350. There's a Carter, which is on the bottom picture. There's the one way, the Steve Center is the picture up above. And then Lyle Jameson is a similar style, so the one that I've got up here. Next slide. Articulating arm would be your Trent Bosch, the Tim Yoder hollowing tool, the simple hollowing tool. I think there's a monster arm, but I'm not completely sure on that. I was
Several brands of those.
There's several brands, and they kind of pivot like an arm. So they have it where they're partially captive, but they also articulate a little bit more freely. All right, next slide. Choosing a system, you want to think about the size and shape, possibility of upgrading. So for instance, my system right here that I've got back there fits on my Jet 1642, but it doesn't fit on the Powermatic here. Simple thing to think about is look at the shapes of the person's making who's selling the tool. So for instance, Steve Center makes this tall, skinnier base. His system can do other shapes, but that's what he's most known for. Same thing with Trent Bosch, that's kind of his shape, uses his system for that way. And then Jakovsky, who makes kind of more of an onion shape, his tools are made for. They've all designed their tools to make their shape around that tool. So something to think about if you're buying a system is what shape you're looking for. Next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why won't that one work on a one way? The height of the
I would just have to raise it.
Okay.
I don't know if the post goes deep enough.
Okay. Fine.
So that's something to think about.
I didn't see any of the limiting factors except that.
Yeah, so I just have to raise the back post.
Okay.
We've got a couple different types. You've got hardened high-speed steel. You've got carbide. You've got the ring tool. I've used hardened the HSS, the hardened steel one. I've used carbide. I've not touched the ring. I have not. The ring tool I heard gives a nice finish, but is somewhat. I've heard it can clog. I've never messed with it for that reason. I've done a lot with hardened high-speed steel. I've been going more and more to carbide. I don't like to sharpen as much, and it's a little bit harder to sharpen the. Besides taking out the cutter, it's a little bit harder to sharpen something like this because you're trying to sharpen this on a grinding wheel. I tend to find I want to keep it in the tool to sharpen, so I tend to find that's a little bit harder to do. Or for instance,
what is the ring tool material made of?
I think it's there's a couple of different types, and I think it's high-speed steel, but it's just how they grind, how they, if we go back to the slide, this one is the one way, and that one, oh wait, no, there we go. This is the one way system, so you have to sharpen it with like a, it looks like a Dremel.
With its own sharpener thing.
Yeah, it looks like a Dremel bit, and that's what you sharpen it with. I haven't messed with it, but I think it's hardened steel, and then I can't think of it's that's the one-way termite, and then I can't think of woodcut has another version where it actually has a little piece that can open and close how much you're using with it. I just haven't found the need for a ring tool yet. All right, next slide.
Only a finishing tool.
Yeah.
Just for cleaning.
Like a scraper.
Yeah. A lot of what I do I do a lot of ornaments, a lot of small vases, where if it's hollow on the if you can't stick your finger into it, or I'm closing up both ends, so I don't care about completely the finish on the inside. It's something to think about when you're finishing it or something that way. Thinking about physics, I teach math. Physics and math go hand in hand together. Think about some of this part is the wood shavings build up in the large diameter of the vase. So for instance here, if I'm taking a look at this vase right here, they're gonna build up here as I'm going. If I'm looking at a vase similar to this one, they're gonna build up more in this area. So you're gonna have two different spots where they're building up that way. Just a centrifugal force makes it that way where you're gonna have different spots where you're building up, and being aware of that while you're in there with the tools. Remember, if we're doing a bowl, something like that, you're gonna have this easier for the shavings to fall out. The shavings actually go up to get out. So either you spray it out with some air, or I like to just take it off the lathe and dump it out, and then put my finger in there or something in there as it's still upside down and knock my nose this time. The cutter and the tool rest should be in line with your, should be all in the same line. If you're hollowing by hand, I find it easier to stand in line with the bed. So like right now, the way the lathe set up, it works great for the captive system, but I would slide the headstock over and be standing at the end of the lathe to kind of get a little bit more in line with it, you're not as far out, trying to be a little bit more comfortable. All right, next slide. So I went off of Trent Bosch's website. He says for up to a 1/2 inch diameter post would be up to, for 6 inches, 5/8, 8 inches, 3/4, up to 12, 1 inch is 14 inch depth that you're cutting. The further the cut away is away from the tool rest, the more unbalanced, think of it like a teeter-totter, where you have more force out there, you'll be sitting there and doing that one. Before we move on to the next slide, this tool is the Joukowsky rocket tool. This is the Hunter ornament tool. They look very similar. The bar size is, I think, roughly the same size, but because this one tapers, this one does not get as far as this one. Because as we look at these two, just this little bit of more mass that we have between the two, this one you can get a whole bunch further in without having as much chatter as this one does. So here, even though these tools are very similar, you're getting different amounts of distance you can get because of how far out you're going.
It flexes.
It flexes. It sits there and you got the bounces that way. And then if we notice here, my original tools had a smaller handle. Everything else I had the longer handle. You want that mechanical advantage. You want that way. So the one that tapers completely straight up is the ornament tool, while the Joukowsky rocket tool is the one that kind of has a little notch right behind the cutter for the chips.
So because it's tapered, that makes it flex more.
And that makes it flex more.
Okay.
So that one, it's great for little ornaments, but I find I'm going to the Joukowsky tool a little bit more often than the ornament one, just because of that reason, is you have a little bit more stability. Yes.
The size considerations that he's recommending here, I guess that's for strength of the bar.
Yeah, that's the bar length for the length of the piece.
Okay. Is it the bar length over the tool rest, or?
I think that's the. So I would think, yeah, the bar length over the tool rest.
Okay.
The stick out, so to speak.
Yeah, and that'd be something to think about. And if I'm doing something like this one, here's one of his handles, and I would have this way locked into my system. So then I have all of this kind of locked in, kind of keeping that physics. We'll see that in a minute or a couple minutes when we move over to the. I think this is a sorbet tool, but that has it so it's built in to lock into your arm. I've never used one of these, but this would seem to be kind of forces you to keep that in line with you. I kind of like it where I can tuck the bar in a little bit, so I don't know how.
This was an early version. I think Jordan started copying it.
Okay.
There might be some others too.
Sounds good.
Can't remember the name of the guy who had that thing out early.
Sorry.
I think I got that from Dick Singh, and it was worn out in the nose, and I sawed it off and put a coupler in there and put a new bar on the thing
Sounds good.
that you can move it in and out.
Go to the next slide. So when we're hollowing, I usually cut a 1/2 inch hole. For today, we're gonna do a 1 inch hole. It just makes it where I'm less likely to blow to the side, make it less exciting on your guys' half. I forget where exactly, I think I got this one also from Trent Bosch's website, the picture here. What I would do here is you're gonna cut a little bit in to begin with, then you're gonna cut through one, cut through two.
My fault.
Can't have both.
I can't do both.
So here's what this picture is kind of missing, is I would have a 4.5, probably right here, where this would still be partially a cylinder. And then I would cut this down, and then I would probably have a 5.5 where I'm cutting the meat away here. I wouldn't make the complete shape before hollowing into this part. Once I get close to it, that's when I would hollow that part. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of keep it cylinder until we get to close to that one. You want more mass behind it, the better. Remember, we're pushing out of in line, away from the headstock. As you're going in, you're pushing away from that headstock. All right, next slide. Some tips, listen to the sound. You can hear what the cutter knife, it'll let you know when it's unhappy. It's like that, it sits there and it goes and makes a whole bunch of noise and lets you know that it's not happy. Look at the chips when you're emptying the vase. You can also tell, look at that your last cut. That's how you can see how nice the finish is going to be on the inside. If you look and you're getting nice shavings coming out, that means you're going to have a nice clean cut going through. If you're getting the powder, that means you are going to have more of a rough cut, something to that texture. Start with a strong tenon. Remember, we're pushing away a lot of times. When I'm going here, I'm pushing out. I'm pushing out when I got my tool in towards the wall. So we're gonna have that, so you have to have a nice tenon there. And then what was the last tip?
I saw earlier one of those rigs you showed had a steady rest. Do you ever use a steady rest? Because you're talking about pushing out. Is it useful to use a steady rest?
Yeah, I've used not a steady rest. I use, depending on how quickly I'm going, I might use it's a box, Robust makes a box tool rest, which has a flat. So instead of it being one point, it's got a flat. I can show that in a little bit. The other thing is to think about grain direction. So if I've got here, I've got my piece of wood. This is pretty much what we're going to use today. I've already made it round and put a 10 on. I felt like that's something that most of us have already done. So why waste our time with that part? But if I'm going to put this and I got this, where this is going to be headstock, tailstock, or vice versa, I'll end up with a vase like this. If I switch rotation and put it where head be spinning this direction, I'll get something like this out of that face. So just depending on which way you got the grain direction. Same thing with something. Here's a block of wood that I got that was all glued up. So you're gonna have a different pattern by having that. Do you guys wanna see any of this stuff? I can pass it around if you guys wanna see it. So here,
No
that's
putting
the
it
block.
in your pocket.
That's that one. Did you guys want to see the cedar vases?
Sure.
That way. I'll pass that around.
That's only is a glued up block. I
Yeah.
didn't expect there to be that many pieces.
It's a cabinet. I don't know what the shop does, but they were getting rid of some pieces, and it's good enough to be churned. It's good enough to be churned, and then if you want to pass around the cedar stuff, that's fine with me too. If you guys want to see anything, just let me know and I can pass it around that way. So it's just different things to think about is how the setup's going to be, and by just different positioning of how the wood is. Same thing with here. These are two different pieces of burl. This block was long and thin like this. This was more of a round burl. So the shape kind of depends on what you're given. If I made this shape on this one, it probably would have only been this big. So it just depends on what's given is what shape you're going to get out of it. Same thing with something like these, where you can get a different shape depending on what you want to do. Or you go like this, make an ornament, and then you plug up both ends and nobody can tell that it's hollow. So, depending on what you're using, you might need to use an Allen key. Both the John Jordan, the Jameson style, and the Allen keys. Any of the Hunter tools uses a T9 screwdriver, which is a star. Sharpening tools, I like these set right here for my hardened high-speed steel tools. and I will actually just rub that instead of taking them to the grinder. It seems to work the best with especially any of those to just resharpen this edge, because I will take these files and just go like this and go around it that way. I use a pin vise with a little needle, so there's a pin vise with a needle in it to clean out any of the holes before I put my Allen key in there or the T9 screw. So it's just that, I take a little sewing pin or something else that way to then clear out the chips. If I'm using this system right here, I've got a little small level so that I make sure it's perfectly flat when I'm setting it up to make sure it fits exactly what. So yeah, so the bar is level to the ground. It should be parallel to the bed, but I'm hoping the bed is parallel to the ground. So that's where I'm kind of looking at it. I think that covered all the tools. I have some more back there if we need to look at any of them that way tool-wise. All right, next one.
Size matters.
Size matters. So we talked about a little bit about this. Depending on what you're selling, you can start selling them for higher prices. I usually stick to the biggest is 6, 7 inches is usually the tallest. Probably most recently is probably maybe an inch bigger than this is what I've been doing. I do a lot more smalls. I find they're a little bit easier to go by. It's a lot easier for somebody to come by if you're thinking about selling it and go, oh, that'd be nice to put on my shelf, than putting up something that's going to cost a couple $100 and they're like, okay, that's a bigger investment than doing something. But my method with selling is I do a lot. I'm more of I call myself a hobby productionist, where I'll do a batch of this, batch of that, instead of just sitting there and doing stuff like that. So just thinking about size, what you have, also the wood dictates it. I can't make a bigger piece than the block of wood that's given to me unless I glue more to it. Next slide. Mistakes will be made. You learn more from the mistakes. Don't go, oh crap, I made a mistake and blew through the side of it. Look, I blew through that piece. Come back to it an hour later and look at it. Why is it that mistake? I've learned more off of this piece right here when it broke, and that piece right there, I know exactly why it broke. This one I didn't empty it out enough on the left. That one, there was a ridge right before that. So instead of attacking the little mound that was inside there, I was going behind the mound and trying to pull it out forward, and I kept on digging in deep into that mound. So that's what I learned from this. So even if you make a mistake, that's something to actually learn from. I learned more from the times that I've blown them up than sitting there and going, hey, this way. And I can look at that piece and I can now cut it up and see, okay, where am I in trouble? 95% of the time, your trouble will be in this area. Because this is where you're going at it with the hook tool, and everything else here you can go in with the straight tool. Because if I take a look this way, let me see if I can hit all these with the straight tool. Where if I'm here, I can't go in from this hole and get this corner. So I'm going in with the hook tool. Well, it'd be the other direction, but I'm going in with the hook tool and getting this part. This is where it's going to be heavy, and this is where I tend to find that I blow it more than at the bottom. All right, I think the next one is the last slide. The next part is having fun. Make a handful of them, put a little bit of pyrography, carve on them, have fun, try different shapes, see what works for you. I like not soaking wet wood, but I like wood where it's still wet, but you're not getting a shower while doing it. So, I don't think that completely answered the question without answering the question, but that's what I kind of prefer, is not soaking wet wood, but not completely dry wood.
Okay. What are the drying deformations effects? Will it split on you when it's wet?
When it's wet, it could split. It depends on the wall thickness. So if you have the right wall thickness, it shouldn't split. This one was done wet. And you can, here, we'll pass it around. You can actually feel the outer smooth.
You took it to that finish wet?
Yeah. You can actually, when it goes around, just feel it. You can actually feel that it's not round anymore.
Yeah.
So it just depends what effect you're going for. If I'm making an urn where I got to put a lid on it, then I'm going to use something dry. Yeah. If I'm making something like that, that's going to be way cooler to me to show off the bumps and the nubs and all that stuff by being wet. Okay. So that's where I'm trying to look at it, is what's this way. All right, so what I did here is this is a block of cedar. I would say it's probably 5 inches long. I don't know. I didn't measure it. I kind of do a lot of things by eye. I don't completely measure a lot of things at my house. That way, what I've done is I put a tenon on it, and I have made it true. I figure you guys don't need to see the aspect of putting a tenon on something and making it true. So what I'm gonna do is do this, take this, and then we're gonna work from here. For most part of it, I use a crown bowl gouge. I've gotten a lot of use out of this one. This seems to be my go-to. To show that this is my go-to, I use this one almost all the time. I got this one at the same time, and we can see how much tool I've gone through on this one. I got another one of these at home. I will be moving to that shortly, but probably in a little bit. A little bit of this I did roughing out with a spindle roughing gouge, but now that we're getting to this, the cedar does tend to tear a little bit, and I'm going to be doing this demo as understanding that it's a demo piece. So we'll talk about sanding. I won't sand. I probably won't spend as much time inside of it because that part of the hollowing is a little bit more on the boring side, but we will talk a little bit about that part when we get to it. And please feel free to interrupt me with any questions as they may come. So even though I know this is round, I like to spin it when we're gonna right before we start doing it, just to make sure it won't hit anything and that we are at the right, just so that my tool rest won't be hit by the piece. So I'm pretty sure that this is gonna be slightly out of round because I did true it up and then I took it out of my chalk to do a little bit of work this morning, enjoying the last day before I go back to school tomorrow. So what I'm doing is I'm going to work on trying to make similar to the shape that was passed around, the other cedar bowl that I made that was passed around. So what I'm going to first do is take a little bit off the front.
I noticed you swinging them from the wing to the point of the gouge as you came around.
Yeah, so I'm
Swing that a little
using
bit.
I'm using the wing here to kind of rough out this shape, and then to get a nice bead, I'm kind of going down and curving around and then opening back up. What I'm doing is I want to get a shape similar to, let me grab a piece up here, is I'm going to, it's very similar to this kind of shape that we have here. So as we look at this shape, I like to have what I call the neck, someplace where you can see, hey, there should be a hole after going this way. If I'm looking up this, I've got a shoulder. I don't like my shoulder to completely be defined where I can tell, okay, where does it start, like where that part is. I like to have a shoulder. I like to have a little neck so I can tell, hey, there's got to be something this way. Some people do a bowl or do a vase where you don't see where the top goes, and I don't tend to care for those. I think from a design, you need that little bit of some sort of a shoulder or some sort of a, here's the shoulder, some sort of a neck to let you know, hey, it's going to do, there's going to be a hole in the top. Kind of gives you a reason to look up that way. Otherwise, it kind of goes flat and it doesn't have to look that way. It doesn't have the right aesthetic to me. So I'm working on making the same shape right here, kind of making the right diameter. And I'm going to leave this part a little bit proud because I know that this is going to be roughly the same size as the 1-inch hole I'm going to drill. So all I'm doing is taking a little bit off this and I'm going to re-true up the back side up here just to make sure it's running smooth, and then we'll drill out the hole in the center. Here I'm using the wing to just kind of true up the center, the side, and then I'm going to go like this and just do my shape one more time. So So I'm coming around, getting past the shoulder, and then working a little bit on the neck. Before I get too busy with making the neck, I want to drill the hole out. Why I'm going to drill the hole out is I can't make now I won't have to worry about making the neck too small. I'm going to waste time if I go and decide to cut the neck, and if I make the neck perfect and there is no there's no shoulder for it to sit. So I don't want to, or there's no, if I drill a hole and it cuts through the neck, that's where I'm going to have an issue. So again, with drilling, we should be bound about 500 RPMs. I need to put that in. I'm not used to the locking lever over there. So we're just about 500 RPMs. I'm gonna go in. One, make sure it's locked tightly. 1, 2, 3. Pull back out. Blow it out. Do it again. So here, now I'm engaging. 1, 2, 3. Back out. 1, 2, 3. We can always move the tailstock closer if you need to, and it makes it go a little bit quicker.
Notice it didn't count over 3.
I'm trying to move a little bit faster for us. I figured a lot of you guys have drilled holes already.
You do know how to count to 5.
Yep.
We had a class.
There we go. All right, so what I did there is I know roughly this size that I'm gonna try and work down to about where the knuckle. So I like to cut it to about here. So now I can sit here and I can go with my drill bit, and I know that right here, that's where the bottom of my vase has to be longer than this part right here. So I know that I just want to drill up to this mark right here. I can put it right here and know roughly that's where my vase needs to end. So what I do then, going back to this. I lucked out, there's a mark there already, but I like to just go like this. And kind of put a little V groove there so I can kind of aesthetically now know for sure where my base is. Because let's say I get a phone call, do something that way, I know where that bottom of the vase should be. Again, that's because I know my drill bit's here. I probably got a little bit extra room, but I'd rather have a little bit of extra room at the bottom than not enough. So I know my base should end about here. That would leave this. I lucked out, and this is why I like to double check the hole size first. That looks to be about 1/4 inch. That's what I was shooting for. So that's why I like to establish a little bit and then drill my hole, is so I know I've got this. Right now we have a slight problem. This is going concave up. I just want to do a slight cut in to make sure that it slopes down. I like to be the peak right here at the edge and then slope down a little bit. I think aesthetically it looks a little bit better. Here we'll repossession the tool rest.
Any questions so far?
And there we go. All I did there was take a little bit of a relief out of the top of it so that it tends to then go a little bit better. I think that just gives a little bit more of the shape by having a point up here. I could have probably gone a little bit further, but it doesn't completely matter. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. Out of my way. Always take the drill bit out of the gel truck and take the drill truck and put it out of the tailstock. If you take this off the lathe, do that. This will probably be 2 years now since I was doing a vase similar to this. Had the tailstock in here with a 1-inch Forstner bit. Finished up my turning. Was like, it's hot out in the garage, it's August. And I decided, this was out with the Jacobs chuck and the 1-inch Forstner bit. Finished my turning, was like, I'm gonna go inside, I'm gonna go cool down. Walked too close to the drill bit, ended up with 7 stitches in my leg. So it's all those little stupid accidents that are the ones that will get you. It's not the major ones, it's all the little ones I tend to find to be more painful. I'm going to use the Easy Wood hollowing tools for this. The reason I took that off is I could sit here and I can go like this. Mind you, my tool rest is a little bit low, and I can work this way. I don't find this as comfortable as if I go to the back of the lathe and I can move to here and I've got more control over it. I don't have this part in front of me. By being able to move here, I have a little bit more control over what I'm doing. Again, I'm just moving it here. I feel like I've got more control by moving into the lathe back this way. So I've got a little bit more of a control. Instead of being here like this where my belly's getting in the way, I'm over here and I got this. My arm is locked underneath. I like to have it going down my arm like this, so I've got my whole body using the tool. If I have it like this, I feel like my belly's in the way, so that's why I moved it this way. I am a little bit low, so I need to move up slightly.
So the force you're going to experience is wanting to pull the tool up. It's going to drag the tip down.
Drag the tip down. So you're going like this. The tool rest is going to, or the wood's going to come hit here, and it's going to kind of want to move it this way.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm just trying, and because I can't see the tip, I can estimate where it is. I've done enough of these, but I'm also kind of looking at it as how can I maximize the way that I'm going to feel the most comfortable with this. Any other questions before we hollow? So when I'm going to hollow, I'm going to go in here. I like to do nibble, 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 and then sweep, where I'm trying to then get any little ridges out as I'm doing that one. So I'm nibbling, taking a little bit out, so I'm swinging it in, swinging it in. This is an exaggerated motion at first, swinging it in, swinging it this way, and then kind of do it this way, try and get rid of any mounds. And that's the way that I tend to find this works the easiest. Usually I'm at about 700 RPM, and I'm going to start here, go a little bit in, and go like this. So I'm going in, and then nibble, 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 and now sweep. Does that make sense? So I'm taking out a little bit. So nibble, 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 sweep. Nibble, 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 sweep. You can hear there the difference in my cuts. You're hearing the difference of the aggression versus the non-aggression. And I'm trying to pick up that last cut. So here. And I'm just making room in there. So I think that was probably 6 to 8 cuts. What's going to happen then is as I'm going through, we could use air. I tend to find this helps a little bit to see it at first, is I'm going to be pouring out.
Just hang it to the curb.
There we go. I would say I've only been hollowing for about a minute, and that's all that's been inside that. So think about all of these chips are inside there as you're going to hollow. And that was less than a minute probably hollowing that much, and ending up with, I got chips that have all fallen here, plus all this that was still inside there. So that's what we got to think about. I tend to find where I have most mistakes is when it's full of chips and I'm like, oh, I can do another cut, and then the tool grabs and that's where I'm having issues. So by having the chips, that tends to be one of those things where I tend to find you need to clean out more often. Let me see how far we are. We're only about this far into the vase. I'll do a couple more cuts with the straight tool. Remember, the straight tool can only go in a straight direction, so it's got to go through the hole. If I go too far, I'm going to hit the outside of my lip. So what we're doing here is we're going to go back. Oh, drop water.
I have a question.
Yes.
When I'm doing a shape like that, I like to do more of the outside, so I can know the direction of the inside.
So as soon as I finish the shoulder, that's when I work my way down. So I know where it's going to end. Sometimes I do that one. It depends on a little bit of the way I'm feeling. I'll do a little bit more once I get this part. So I'm here at the peak right now, and that's about as far as I'll go before then, trying to hollow out that part. I like to leave as much mass as I want, as I can there. Just because I feel it's more supported, I can get a little bit more aggressive with it. So all I did there was open up a little bit more of a hole here so my swan neck, the swan neck tool or the curve tool can fit in. I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna blow out the tip. And then what I can do is I can move to this tool. What I like, what I can't do right now is I can't go like this and put it in. As soon as I do that, all my force is here and it's gonna flip on me. I need to move my tool rest back, and I need to be able to then have the flat part of my tool, it's got to be past the curve. So it's got to be something like this into it because it's got to be past this point. You want to be in the same line as the cutter. So if we do any of this part, it's really easy for it to just go like that and tip. That's why I tend to not like this one that I handmade has that part this way, or Ellsworths are not as severe. This is an Ellsworth style tool where he's got this part like this. I tend to find that these be a little bit more grabby than something like this with the swan neck, where it's got that curve built in. Are there questions about that?
Do you sharpen your own carbide?
I don't sharpen my carbide. You're sharpening, but you're not ever getting it back up to the original sharpness.
Kurt, I notice your body swaying back and forth, but
I was just about to talk about
you
that.
don't move your arms.
So what I did there is first thing I did is I went and went in. There's a little shelf there where the last cut went up. I went and found that shelf and kind of went right before that and scrubbed in. The other thing I'm doing there is I'm moving my whole body. This is why I move the whole thing this way, is because by moving the headstock and the whole stock, I can move my whole body and kind of do this motion, moving at my hips. If I had it back here and I have the whole end here, all I'm doing then is moving my belly. I feel like that's less, I'm moving more this way where I feel like I can get more of a solid, smoother cut by going in this direction. Does that make sense? And for the most part, that's all I need to do with this tool, is just to get inside and get this shoulder where I need it. Once I get past there, I'll probably need to go back into it in a little bit. But now I've hollowed up to about here, so I'm going to bring down some of the mass behind it. So I'm going to go to the back of the bowl gouge, and I'm going to kind of work on my shape. So again, we can still stick to the kind of swooping motion with our whole body with this part. So here, I'm gonna make a little bit of room because I know I'm gonna work this way. And I'm just gonna kind of take this and go and make my first. Here I got rough shape what I want. I got a ridge here, I got a ridge here. So what I like to do is do a little shear scrape and get rid of that. And same thing up here. I'm shooting for a real fine shaving. So what I did there, by lowering the handle and getting this one, I'm getting this real fine shaving, and that then tends to take out whatever I need. So I'm looking at those bumps and I'm just taking the shear scrape and going this way. I could probably bring this down, but let's hollow a little bit more out of the middle. Remembering that our distance is probably a little bit more closer to here is where I want the bottom to be. Are there questions with what we've done so far? Yes.
You drill a hole for your depth in the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I dig it all, I'd go all the way down. Right now I'd probably blow this out. While we were talking, I've been digging out a lot of the chips that way. I do the whole length all at once. The only time where that differs is if I'm doing an ornament where then I'm going to drill all the way through. I go back and drill it again afterwards. So that I feel like I've still got some more support when I go try and make it round. Put that like that. Double checking. I had to move the tool rest out of center for the last one, but now I'm going to move it back. I did raise it back up, switching back from the bowl gouge now to a hollowing tool. I'm going to find that ridge that I had in there, and I'm looking for it with my tool, and I'm going to take light cuts with that. Go back, refine that ridge, go in, nibble, nibble. Now I'm going to smooth that out, lighter cut, smooth it out. As you're going through there, you can kind of feel where the peaks are. The hardest part is figuring out just to try and hit the peaks. You want to take a lighter cut. What I found on that one where it exploded the maple base that I said mistakes will be made, that one, what I was doing is I was pushing too hard past the cut and then lightly going over the actual part. You want to lightly and then go harder on the actual mountain, the higher spots that way. It's one of those things, it sounds very trivial, but when you're going through it, you're like, I need to find more that way. Every time I stop the lathe, I take it out. I either blow it out, or I go and I unscrew it and do it this way. You are never going to be mad at yourself for emptying the vase out too many times. You're going to be mad when you go, I should have emptied it out 2-3 minutes ago, when you got that catch and you're like, oh. I'm shooting for the same wall thickness here as it is throughout. So I'm shooting for whatever thickness I have here at the neck as the wall thickness throughout. For this one, it'll probably be a little bit heavier just because when it's live in front of a group, I'd rather have it heavy than, oh, he came by and we had an explosion.
What thickness are you shooting for?
I'm shooting for about 1/4 inch. I can feel right here at this part, I know I'm heavy, and I can feel a little ridge in there. So I would, if this was me doing this at home, I'd go back in with this tool now and hit that little point. It depends on how much hollowing you guys want to see. Because it's, the hollowing I think is a little bit harder to, it's easier to feel than it is to see.
Yeah.
I went just on a class with Nick Agar, and Nick Agar goes, we're gonna do Halloween and then we're gonna do painting. So it's you get to see Halloween and watch paint dry. So that's what I feel like a little bit listening to this one is that way. I'm gonna pull the tool rest back, get a little bit out of that ridge, and then we'll go back to the straight tool. So again, since we're switching back to this tool, I need to make sure that my cutter, or that when my cutter is being engaged, that the straight part in line with that cutter is here. I also tend to find, I like this box scraper. It's from Robust, but then my tool lays completely flat on it. So it's a nice little way to, hey, it's sitting there. I've got a little bit more of a larger kind of surface. Larger fulcrum when we think about that teeter-totter.
What's it called? Box scraper?
It's a box tool rest, I think is what it is. It's from
That's
Robust.
just the name of it, or?
Yeah. So you see, yeah.
Oh, I see.
So if you're doing a long box, you can stick it inside.
Oh, okay.
See, Bill.
All I did there was a small ridge. I was just trying to get rid of that little bit in there. This one is still a little bit on the heavy side, but that's good enough for me. We can take, I like to go with my fingers if it's a big enough hole. The other thing I like to do is go like this and kind of tap it. I don't think I brought calipers. I tend not to use my calipers. I just don't care for, I always tend to have trouble with the actual double-sided calipers because each point has to be perpendicular there. I tend to get it, but I tend to fiddle around enough with it where I'm just getting frustrated using the calipers. Not those, do you have the C's, the figure eights, the double ones.
Oh.
I knew I was gonna forget something, at least it was something easy. So here you can take these in and you can kind of see the thickness this way, but I always tended to have a little bit of trouble because you're supposed to have this point right here. Let me see if it's easier to see that way. You're supposed to have this piece right here perpendicular to where it's supposed to be touching. So I always tend to have a little bit of trouble with that part. Nobody else besides mainly wood turners will go in there. You're taking this more out for when they pick it up and they go, ooh, it's light. When people go through there, that's what's gonna happen, is less people will actually come up and actually put their fingers in there. Some will. You can take a little piece of sandpaper and go in there. But for the most part, most people will not go and stick your finger right away in the base. And you'll get the occasional person that will go up to it and blow into it, and that's always a little bit fun because no matter what you do, there will always be a little bit of shavings in there. So what I just did is I moved the tool rest forward because I'm going back to the straight tool. I am roughly right about this line right here, and I have only about that much more to go. So all I'm doing is just gonna go in there, kind of rough that out. We'll see if, I think I've got enough room, famous last words, to not have to blow out the chips, but we might blow out the chips this way.
Oh, laser.
So here I'm trying to find that out. I went down in the hole, now I'm pulling back, and right there's the end of that little shelf that I've made, and I'm just gonna kind of swing. And swing. Alright, as I'm doing that, all I'm trying to do is check my thickness right now. I should blow out the chips beforehand.
So I think your fingers would be the quickest, easiest way to.
Yeah, the fingers is what I like to use the most. We're still fat in the middle, but that's fine with me. And I think we're good enough. I have a little bit of a bump in the bottom. So to get rid of the bump, what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of go in like this, and then you're just gonna rock up and down underneath it. Is the easiest way I've gotten to get rid of the bump. So I'm gonna take this, turn the lathe on, wait for it to get fully sped up. And I think I got rid of the bump. If not, oh well. Wait till the lathe stops. It's better, it's still there a little bit, but that's fine with me.
That's better than a dimple, huh?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's better than a dimple that way. I know that I'm still a little bit safe there to work a little bit down, and then we'll just work the outside. So I like to wait till I'm close to sanding till I'm almost done with the piece. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a little bit of room here and kind of remember where I'm supposed to finish. So what I'm doing is clearing out a little bit more space to work. So I'm just gonna cut a little bit of a couple spots this way, and now I'm gonna make a little bit of room for my tool to swing around with. Now that I've made some room, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna work on just redefining that shape. Making a little bit more room to work with. And I'm gonna redefine that shape.
Is that a 40 grind on the front of that too?
I think this is a 45 using the Varigras system. I've never gotten into the 40-40 grind. I tend to find this works out really well for what I'm doing. It's a 45 and I forget, third notch down on the Varigras and then 2 inches sticking out. 2. Double checking my thickness. Right here is the thinnest part that I have. So that's fine with me. And then I'm just gonna work on doing this down. I tend to find for aesthetics, the opening hole size and the foot should be roughly the same size. It's fine to have it a little bit bigger or smaller, but for the aesthetics reason, I like to keep it roughly the same and a little bit undercut.
They're all done by eye.
Yeah, I don't like to measure it.
Is it partially because of the color, or is it the shape you're?
The shape. I like to have something like this. Even if we look at like, so here, this one's a little bit smaller, but that's because I kind of wanted that rocking motion. This one's roughly the same, I think, maybe a little bit smaller. Even this one right here, the foot size is roughly about the same, if not a little bit smaller. It's just what I think looks aesthetically pleasing. You don't want it to, you want them to, if you're trying to sell these or give them away, you want them to pick it up and go, oh wow, that's light. So you want it to look light and also be light. You want to have that, that is what I'm going for, is that to look and feel light. It doesn't need to be, this is cedar, so automatically it's light. It's lighter than other woods we work with. So if you're going to do something like an African blackwood and make a base out of that, let's say, that's going to be heavy. It's going to be a heavier feeling wood, or like desert ironwood. It's going to automatically mean you got to take more out of it for this way. The cedar is a little bit more forgiving, where it's a light wood to begin with, so it automatically, when you pick it up, it feels light. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I'm making a little bit more room here, just so I got some more room for my tool to work with. And then I'm gonna go back here and cut down a little bit more. So I've got a couple spots here that are a little bit high. I would probably shear scrape those down. And then what I would do, and I didn't bring any, is let's pretend my bubble wrap here is sandpaper. What I would do is I'm gonna make,
You want some?
it doesn't matter. I'm gonna take a large strip like this, and I'm just gonna kind of go like this and go over the entire side. Kind of going diagonally to kind of then,
What grid do you want?
I start at 120 and I usually stop about on 320. That's what I'm a kind of, this should be picked up. It should feel smooth to my hands, but I'm not gonna sit there and do this one. So I'll just take the long strip of it. Well, I usually use a strip. That's fine. No, that's fine. I don't want you guys to get the dust. So I'm gonna take the large strip here and kind of go like this, working across as the lathe is spinning, because then I'm getting rid of, I feel like that blends it. I feel like that then blends some of my bumps in by then kind of going across the piece. Yeah, kind of going diagonal. Tends to blend in that part.
I want you to notice the bottom of this where it's all rough cut.
Yeah.
We move in on that a little bit. When you push your tool too hard, that's what you're gonna get compared to what Kurt has on here. It's just nice and smooth.
And it's knowing what you're gonna keep.
All about that touch.
I'm not gonna keep this side, so I find with roughing it out and making it and taking have more aggressive cut, where I'm gonna try and work my smooth cut over here. If this was, it's cedar. It's in part of the reason I brought it for the demo. It's a little bit more forgiving on this way. It automatically is a little bit lighter, but I know that if I don't, I got a little bit here and chip out, but that's nothing bad. A little bit of sandpaper would take that out, no problem. But I'm sitting here and I'm worrying about just the face that I need to finish. I'm partly, again, hobby production, where I'm doing batches, but I'm not sitting there trying to belt a whole bunch of these out.
I would think it would be interesting also to just put a little bit of the white border and cut all this out and leave a base on the bottom.
I didn't bring that piece. Yeah, I've done that before.
It's just that red is so attractive from the top and matching a little bit on the bottom.
Yeah. Or what I could have done, and this would have been a design opportunity, if I would have taken a little bit more out of here, this red would have creeped up. So depending on how much I did, same thing with this one. So going for the same similar shape, if I took a little bit more where it's going in, I could have then had more of that red going back and forth. I kind of like having it more where then it forces you to look at the top. That's what I'm trying to hope for with the cedar. So what I'm gonna do here, this is my parting tool, where is it? This is my parting tool. I don't cut mine completely square at the top. I like to have a leading edge right here. This edge cuts the keeping side, this edge cuts the non-keeping side. My thought is, if I'm cutting first, then I'm scraping. I don't know how true that is. I feel like I get a slightly better finish because I'm cutting first with this side and then scraping the rest away. Kind of, if we think about our saw blades, you have it cut, then kind of like where your table saw blade has that kind of little bit of a pitch so you don't jam. I kind of do the same thing, and then I flip it back and forth. So I'll cut a little bit this way, then flip it this way, then do. But always cutting this side on the base side. Does that make sense?
Sort of like I forget what they call it, like on a profile plane where they have those little cutters
Yeah.
that cut before you do the big cross cut.
So that's my thought. I don't know how true this is, but I'm going off of this way. And I would say it's minuscule degree difference. It's not completely straight, but it's not noticeable this way. I do a lot of earrings and stuff like that. I use a skew as a parting tool often, and that's my kind of the way is, hey, this is maybe my parting tool to kind of more of that skew action where I'm cutting. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna first work on this part, the bigger part, and then work on the part closest. So I'm just making a little bit of room so there's less binding, less chance for chips. So here, now that I went a little bit in, I'm gonna have to go again in this way, and then again in this way. All right, we have that little bit of a ledge right here. I don't know if that is seeable, but at this point, I would then take my bowl gouge and work just off that part, or spindle gouge, just to get rid of this little part right in this area. Is that seeable? Oh, there's a little shelf. Then I would do my final sanding at this point. Now that I have that part, is then that would be my, I have a little bit, I'm gonna take my long sheet of paper, sanding paper, about 1 inch, maybe 1/2 inch wide, and just kind of work that down. Just kind of keeping that constant flow going through it. I will grab a spindle gouge real quick to get rid of that. So all I'm doing here is just trying to get rid of this little part right here, that little lip. I would be getting rid of that little bump here and that other part, but good enough for now. So all I did there was just trying to smooth out my bottom. I want the bottom to kind of look like it should still be curving in the table. If you look at it straight on, I kind of want that look like it's a parabola where then you would hit, you think it could go down into the bottom, kind of keeping that curve. Does that make sense? Or if you took like the cord here and took 2 points of it, if this was a little bit looser, you want to keep that kind of natural curve going through there. Instead of just going in and jabbing in, you kind of want to float the, parting tool down.
Where you need a fishnet.
Yeah, either you need something that way. Usually I bring a Japanese saw and just do a couple cuts. Forgot to bring that today. Then I would take a small gouge for carving and just carve up this little nub. I go to my drill press where I've got the little sanding disc on the drill press, the power sanding disc, and just go up and hit the bottom with that. You guys want to feel that?
Where do you get your cedar?
This was an estate sale. I drove out to Aurora for this for the cedar. They had a handful of other tools and a Powermatic that I was too late for, but picked up the cedar in that way and picked up my dad a couple pieces of basswood and a flex cut knife.
What the Powermatic go for?
I have no clue. I didn't bother to ask. I know I don't. Oh, here. Let me see if I can. I can take the nub off, I think, with full gouge.
There's chisels under there.
I just gotta get it low enough.
You know, sharpen. And they're flat. Or over to the other building and get a carver's gouge.
That's flat enough.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That probably was the best way, the best tool for that job, but. Alright, are there questions? Because I'm done turning.
No, cedar, I'm the dumb one here. I think cedar is a pine, is that right?
I think so. I just think it looks pretty. It comes out with
It smells so good.
it smells good.
That's not-